Captain Hale, are you okay? Jasmine winced as she scrambled to her feet, trying to ignore the pain radiating from where her back had slammed into the floor. I'm fine. A quick glance around the spaceship's deck indicated she hadn't been the only one knocked off balance by the blast. Concern flitted through her mind, but tending to injuries wasn't her responsibility or priority. Keep firing! Her order resonated through every station on the TCF Orthris, reaching all her subordinates. Through her window, she watched glaring white beams shoot forth from the combat ship's massive cannons. "Where are the others?" she asked her second in command. Commander Garrison tapped the controls in front of him. A holographic map of the region popped up, and several blinking lights approached the center. "Moving into position now." "Excellent." She smiled. "As long as we hold formation, we should—" Another explosion rocked the ship. This time, the lights flickered and dimmed as Jasmine landed hard on her shoulder. "What the hell was that?" No definitive answer came amidst the buzz of confusion rippling across the main deck. She groped around for her earpiece and slid it back into place. "Status report, now!" "The enemy's attack must have breached our armor," a voice crackled in her ear. Jasmine squinted into the shadows, searching for Garrison. She crawled forward until she reached his side. "This ship has the finest shields available." She helped him into a sitting position. "There's no way their weaponry should have been able to penetrate." The commander rubbed the back of his head and winced. "Apparently the enemy got an upgrade," he said dryly. Before she could respond, the ship jolted again with enough force to send her rolling head over feet into the nearest wall. The lamps on the deck extinguished completely, replaced by the sinister red glow of the emergency lights. Wailing sirens blared through the ship as she struggled to right herself. "This can't be good," Garrison mumbled. The next jumbled report sent from a soldier on a lower deck confirmed his assertion. "All defenses are down." Though marred by static, the urgency of the message came through. "I repeat, all defenses are down." "Activate every backup we have." Jasmine jumped up, hauling Garrison after her. "Quick, let's review our options," she shouted over the alarm. "If we retreat behind our allies, can our engineers get the shields repaired?" He averted his eyes. "It's possible." "Now is not the time for vague answers, Commander." She tapped his arm, her gloves clinking on the plates of his armor. "Can they repair the damage in a timely manner?" His shoulders slumped. "Doubtful. Even if we retreat, we'd be leaving a wide open space for enemy attacks to get through. As it stands, we're an easy target." Notes of fear crept into his voice. "A very easy target." "You're not suggesting—" The crimson lights enhanced the creases in his brow as he frowned. "Evacuation might be the best choice here." Jasmine looked around the main deck of the vessel that had served as her home for years. The day the Orthris was turned over to her control had been one of the proudest moments of her life. "I'm not abandoning my ship." Garrison's face showed no traces of hope. "With all due respect, ma'am, the next shot could kill us all." For a fleeting instant, she considered sacrificing herself with the Orthrus, but she had a duty to protect the other men and women on board. Time was running out. She needed to act. "Does the intercom still work?" she asked softly. He dipped his chin. "It should be powered by the emergency systems." She took her place at her station for the last time and picked up the handheld device. "This is Captain Hale speaking. I am issuing the official order to evacuate the TCF Orthrus." She waited a beat and tried to ignore the outbursts of surprise around her. "This is not a drill. Commence evacuation procedures now." A bright ray of energy shot past the window, yet didn't contact the ship. "Send word to our nearby allies if outgoing communications are up and running," she instructed Garrison. "It'll be easier than having dozens of messages coming in from the escape pods, and at least they'll know to expect us." "Yes, ma'am." Jasmine repeated her orders into the intercom and then stepped back to survey her ship once more. She would have indulged in some nostalgic memories, but survival was her utmost goal. Signaling to the commander, she picked up her helmet and firearm and headed for the staircase. They joined the rest of their colleagues in descending to the lowest deck of the ship. With each step, she braced herself for the fatal blast. It didn't come. When she reached her destination, she stood at the bottom of the stairs and watched her people file to the appropriate locations in a choreographed routine they had practiced dozens of times. An eerie calm settled over the crew as they moved. Their lives depended on precision and efficiency more than ever before. One by one, the doors to the escape pods shut, and the miniature ships disembarked from their host. Only Jasmine, Garrison, and their assigned partners remained. "I guess this is it," the commander said. She nodded, her throat tight. "I'll see you soon, Captain Hale, and we'll finish this fight." He stood up straight and raised his right hand to salute. She returned the gesture, though her arm felt like it weighed 100 pounds. He entered the pod with his pilot, and they departed. Jasmine let out a long breath, her boots frozen to the floor. The sound resonated in the near-empty room, its echo a reminder of the difficult decision she'd made. "Ma'am?" She turned her head. Lieutenant Moore, the soldier tasked with flying her to safety, stood next to the doorway, his eyebrows raised in silent inquiry. She hadn't fulfilled all her obligations yet. "Let's go," she said, brushing past him. Inside the tiny vessel, she put on her helmet, snapping it on to the rest of her armor. Moore closed the door and took his seat at the controls. They fastened their harnesses, and the engines hummed behind them. With the push of a button, the last two members of the Orthrus's crew fled their dying ship. Jasmine turned around to peer out the small, rectangular window at the rear of the pod. With all the lights extinguished, the vessel appeared to be little more than a giant, hulking shadow. Even with the lack of illumination, she saw the severe damage to the hull. Repairing it would have taken time they didn't have. Although she didn't doubt her decision, the battered state of her beloved home left her stomach twisted in knots. "The Orthrus was a fine ship, ma'am." Moore's voice interrupted her reverie again. I bet someone will come along to retrieve it and tow it to our spaceports after we send those bastards back across their borders. It'll be good as new in no time. I hope you're right. She remained staring out the window. What's our ETA? We're getting you out of the combat zone and heading for the Titania space station. He drummed his fingers on the steering controls. It's hard to tell exactly with this minimal equipment, but my best guess is we'll dock within the hour. Flashes tore across their sector of outer space as the battle raged on behind them. The Orthrus grew smaller and smaller outside the rear window. Jasmine's jaw clenched. For the first time in her career, she'd been forced to retreat. Frustration at not being able to help defend the sector's borders from their foes simmered in her veins. Every part of her ached to jump aboard the next shuttle leaving the station and rejoin the fight. Irritation turned to dread as a broad shaft of light shot directly toward the enormous combat ship. "Oh no," she murmured. A wave of nausea crept up her throat. No, 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 no! Unable to tear her eyes away, she watched the blast destroy the Orthrus in a brilliant explosion. She cried out and slammed her fist on the back of her seat. Moore jerked his head around at the sound of her glove punching the leather. Behind his helmet's visor, his eyes grew wide. Damn! He let out a whistle. Where did they get those kinds of weapons? Her teeth gritted together again. Just get us to the station. Yes, ma'am. He turned back to the dashboard and pushed a lever up. I wish these things moved faster, but I guess there's not a lot of room for high-powered rockets. You'd think the design would... A loud impact interrupted the pilot's ramblings. An unknown force sent the small pod careening off course, and Jasmine clutched her harness. She closed her eyes in an attempt to avoid dizziness as the ship spun out of control, turning her body over and over. "Lieutenant!" she screamed. "What's happening?" "Something hit us." She let out a noise of exasperation. "I know that, but what?" Moore jerked the steering column to the side, and the pod's rotations slowed. "I don't see anyone around us." The ship straightened out, but his grip remained tight, his knuckles white. Either someone's attacking from stealth, or we got hit by debris from the explosion. Letting go of the straps, she searched for a hidden foe outside the nearest window. I take it we don't have weapons to fight back? On an escape pod? Nope. The color drained from his face, and he leaned forward to inspect the glowing panels on the dashboard. We have bigger problems than trying to figure out where the impact came from. The dials and displays made little sense to her, as she'd never flown one of these vessels. What do you mean? He pointed at one gauge whose arrow dipped lower and lower. We're losing power. Communications are down, too. Who knows how much the blast took out? His brow furrowed beneath his visor. I can try to get us back on course, but I'm not sure we'll be able to make it all the way to the Titania. Well, we're not going to float around out here until we die. Jasmine straightened in her seat. What are our choices? The same defeated expression Commander Garrison had given her darkened the lieutenant's eyes. We can stay in one place and see if someone comes by to rescue us, and hope nothing else happens. Or it can fly us in the direction of the Titania, and maybe one of our allies will come across us. If the enemy doesn't find us first. She sighed. Anything else? Moore looked back and forth between his console and what lay ahead of the tiny ship. We may have a third option. There appears to be a cluster of planetoids nearby. I didn't think there was anything like this out here, so I don't have any information on them. But we can try to land on one of them and at least repair the radio, if not some of the other damage. What if we land and can't take off again? He shrugged. I didn't say any of them were good options. Jasmine swiveled to survey the scene they'd left behind. In the distance, warring ships opened relentless fire on each other. Even from far away, she could see the gap left by the absence of the Orthrus in the Terran Commonwealth Forces formation. You knew you'd have to make these tough decisions when you accepted your promotions. I don't want to be attacked or captured, she said. We need to get someplace safe as fast as possible. Head for the planetoids. Yes, ma'am. Moore adjusted the steering column. I'll land the pod on the nearest one. The vivid blue-green orb of their destination appeared outside the windshield, increasing in size as they flew closer. Before Jasmine could breathe a sigh of relief at one of the day's plans actually working out, a loud clank sounded beneath her feet. The pod shuddered and slowed. Damn it, she snapped. What is it now? I can't say for sure. Moore checked the displays again and grimaced. But if we don't enter the planetoid's atmosphere soon, we're going to miss our chance. Can we make it? I'll try to use the engine's boosters, but it's a last-ditch effort, and there's no guarantee. He took a deep breath. Captain, if this doesn't work out, I just want to say No, we're getting out of this alive. She tightened the straps of her harness and double-checked her helmet was secured. I have faith in you, Lieutenant. Land this ship. Yes, ma'am. He pushed a button. The ship burst forward and, despite some tremors, maintained a straight path. Ahead of them, the turquoise sphere filled the windshield at an alarming rate. We're coming in too fast. Moore wrestled with the controls as the small ship jostled its passengers. As they penetrated swirling white clouds, Jasmine caught a glimpse of dense forests and cerulean water. She didn't have long to examine more of the planet's features before the pod lurched upward. There's no good place to land. The lieutenant gulped. I'll bring us down as gradually as I can and hope for the best. She nodded, prepared to accept whatever grim fate lay in store for her. Do what you need to do. Here we go. The ship touched down on the shores of a narrow lake. It skidded across the water, skipping over the surface and bouncing through the waves until it reached the land on the opposite side. Upon making contact with the grass and gravel, the pod flipped over, spinning in erratic loops as it continued its trajectory through the trees. Wordless screams filled the cabin. Jasmine was helpless against the forces throwing her body against the safety harness. The thick straps dug into her waist and shoulders, and her limbs flailed wildly. She attempted to look in Moore's direction to see how he fared, but the ship tumbled too fast for her to get her bearings. Just as death seemed inevitable, the pod slammed into an unknown object in front of them. The impact thrust her forward, yet the harness held her in place. She yelped in pain, and her breath came in short, ragged gasps. As she struggled to breathe evenly, one thought echoed through her mind. I'm alive. Little by little, she calmed herself and assessed her surroundings. The angle of the pod left her dangling several feet above the ground, so she unfastened the harness's buckles and dropped down. Lieutenant? The collision had caused the pod's interior to become dented and misshapen. Leafy branches pressed against the windshield. Beneath it, the wall's malformations obscured the ship's controls. She scrambled to where her colleague had sat and recoiled at the sight that greeted her. Moore's body lay crushed between his seat and the bulging dashboard. His side of the ship had taken the brunt of the impact, and the features designed to protect him had trapped him in an unfortunate position. His head lolled to one side, his eyes lifeless behind his visor. Lieutenant? She shook his shoulder, though she knew it was a futile gesture. Lieutenant! Panic prickled along her skin as her voice resonated inside the remains of the cabin. She tried to fight back her anxiety and think of a plan. Her gaze rested upon the pod's warped door. When she pushed to make her exit, it refused to budge. Unwilling to give up, Jasmine sat on the floor and kicked at the door with all her strength. It finally gave way, swinging back into a curtain of curled vines. She brushed them aside as she climbed out of the pod and fought through the foliage to examine the exterior. One panel had been blown off by the blast in space, exposing charred and twisted wires. She ran her fingers along the jagged edges and shivered. A miracle had saved her, but the ship was damaged beyond repair. Aware of her limited oxygen supply, she took her chances and removed her helmet. Clean air filled her lungs, and the scent of flowers wafted along with the gentle breeze. Though glad she didn't have to worry about her ability to breathe, a fresh wave of fear rippled down her spine. The crash had left her stranded and alone.